Okay, welcome everybody. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law. We are doing chapter 60. We're up to number 8. Chapter 60, number 8. We sort of started it last time. Introduction. So we're in the middle of discussing brachas, different blessings that we make on special occasions or on things that we see. So one of the brachas on things that we see is if we encounter a place where a miracle happened to us. Miracle happened to us. So test number 8, chapter 60. Mish Asaloi Kodesh Baruch Hu Nes. Hashem made for a person a nes, a miracle. Shaloik Terech HaTeva, not in the way of nature, not according to the laws of nature, beyond the laws of nature. So in other words, many of us have miracles in life, but sometimes, it's a divine providence, it's something, it's enclosed in nature. So that's not the type of miracle we're discussing. We're discussing a miracle that transcends nature. So the commentators on the Shulchan Aruch, the big Shulchan Aruch, where it brings this halacha, they give an example that someone was in a desert and there was no water. And suddenly a spring came out. There was no spring there before. It's a miracle. It's a miracle. And the person survived. Right? Some of the, so it's these type of things. So a miracle happened for someone. Now, when a person sees the place, where the miracle happened there. So, it happened last year or 20 years or whatever it happens to be. And a person goes by this place again. So this place so we're not talking about at the time of the miracle. We're talking about a person came back afterwards on another occasion. So when he's there, he should make the following blessing. Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed you Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, our God, King of the universe, she'asa li nes, that made for me a miracle, b'makim hazeh, in this place. That's what happens. That's what we should do. Now, just to mention, before we spoke about other blessings, and we said, for example, we see an ocean. This is if you saw it more than 30 days ago. So the same idea applies to here. So if the miracle happened to him, on the corner of his street, and he goes there every single day, he's not going to make the blessing. He's going to make it when I'll rephrase that. He's not going to make it. He's only going to say the blessing more than 30 days after the last time made the blessing. So that's what happened. Okay. Now, not only the person themselves makes this blessing. V'gam benoy ben benoy. Also his son and his grandson. Now, obviously, the son and grandson who were only born because he lived, otherwise they wouldn't have lived, so they directly benefit from the miracle. But afilu, even if they were born before the miracle took place, so they didn't directly benefit, they still say the blessing. They still say a blessing. Kates and Mavarchim, how do they make a blessing? But Noye Mavarech, a son makes the following blessing. So it starts off this same Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, bless you Hashem, King of the universe, our God, King of the universe. But instead of saying, who made for me a miracle in this place, he says, She'asa nes la'avi b'makom hazeh. He made a miracle for my father in this place. Now, Vim Heim Rabim, if there's many sons or more than one son, right? So let's just make up a number, 6 sons. and they happen to come to this place together, they say, Ovinu, our father. Ben Benoi, a grandson, he says the following, La'avoisai. It happened, the miracle for my fathers, not as my ancestors. Makes a blessing, praising Hashem, who made a blessing who made a miracle for my ancestors in this place. And again, Vimheim Rabim, if there's many people there, many grandsons, Oimrim they say Lavosenu, to our forefathers, our fathers. Okay. All right. So that's if we come to a place where a miracle happened. Next situation. Mishnaselo Nes Harbe. Someone, he had many miracles. Many miracles. So, sometimes you'll meet a Holocaust survivor and they'll tell you the fact they survived, there was several miracles that happened to them. And that's how they survived. So maybe in this camp or something, this concentration camp, they experienced several miracles in that place. If he reaches any other place where a miracle happened for him, so even one of the places, he had 2 miracles in the concentration camp, 1 miracle in a death march, 1 miracle somewhere else. It's several miracles that somehow he survived that happened. So if he goes to any of the places where one of these miracles happens, he should mention all the other places. He should say in one blessing. And so he should say, not on Makom Azeh, in this place. He should say that you made a blessing for me in this place and in that, Huppertsville and Tiny Town and whatever the places are. He'll mention all the places. And interestingly, let's say he goes to both places on the same day or more than one place. So in the first place, he made a blessing and he included everywhere. And 2 hours later, he goes to one of the other places. He says the blessing again. And he mentions all the places again. So in each place, he includes them all in one place. But Yomer, what does he say? As I just said before, praising Hashem, who made a miracle for me in this place, but Mokim Pliny and in such and such place. The same bonom as Kirim Kasham Makomis, and the same applies to the blessings that sons say. Again, when they come to one place, they make the blessing for several places. Yes, David.
This is different than a place where a person benches Gomel for something that happened to him.
Yeah, so Gomel is not necessarily a miracle. Gomel means their life was in danger, and they've survived. Now, it could be a miracle, but I mean, it's here we're speaking about a miracle beyond the laws of nature. So he could have survived if he just goes back to the example that we gave, the commentators Shulchan give about the spring miraculously opening up in the desert. Springs don't do that. Either there's a spring there or there's not a spring there. Right? If a spring appears, it's a miracle. But maybe that's a miracle beyond the laws of nature. A miracle within the laws of nature is a group of travelers are coming by and they had water. They gave him some water. So he might bench Gomer for that because he God forbid could have died for thirst. He was at the risk of it, and all of a sudden someone came and brought him water. So he benches Gomer, but he doesn't make a blessing on the miracle. And likewise, the miracle didn't necessarily have to be something that saves his life. I guess it does, something that saves his life. Otherwise, there's nothing special about it.
What happened to me was in about 1980, we lived in Crown Heights, and I was on my way into the pizza store. And just as I went through the doorway and came into the store, this big heavy sign from in front of the store came crashing down right in the spot where I was standing on the outside of the store.
Wow.
So right away, everybody said you should bench Gomo. So I don't know if that's considered a miracle.
Well, yes. So that wouldn't be a miracle beyond the laws of nature. I mean, it might be miraculous, whatever made you step forward at that moment, a hidden miracle, but according to the laws of nature, you walk forward and it misses. So, so it's not necessarily, that's not necessarily a miracle. Just by the way, and again, I'm not talking about this case, I'm speaking in general. Even though often people say, oh, you should bench Goimel, the person should always ask a rabbi whether they should bench Goimel, because Goimel has to be that a person's life was in direct danger at that moment. So I'll give you an example. Let's say there was a person who was standing on a street corner and a car was going right at them. And at the last second, someone came in and pushed them out of the way. So that person benches Goimel because their life was in direct danger at a certain moment. But let's say different case, a person was standing there and the car went out of control. The exact same case, but this time, without him moving, it just missed him. So his life wasn't actually in direct danger because it was never actually going to hit him the way it was going. So it's not a goimel, even though it terrified him, and he was just saved by half an inch. Then everyone goes, "Wow, they almost died. You should bench goimel," different things, but his life wasn't actually in direct danger. So so sometimes it's worth checking in with these things. Okay, so that's but this blessing that we mentioned in number 8 is if it was something beyond the laws of nature. So someone pushing him out of the way is not necessarily beyond the laws of nature. People do that. If there was no one there before, and it seems like it was Eli or Novi came pushed him out of the way, then it's beyond the laws of nature. It's a miracle. It all depends.
Rabbi,
Yes.
the most immediate example occurs to me when the Crook's character shot at Trump when he was going to give that talk, and he turned. Had he not turned, the bullet that grazed his ear would likely have penetrated his head. Is
Right.
that
So if he was Jewish, he would probably need to bench Gomer. Right,
bench Gomer?
because
That
you're right. He happened to move last minute, but in other words, the bullet was coming. But if he had not moved, let's say he was standing perfectly stationary, and it just went by and grazed his ear, it means his life was never actually in direct danger from that bullet. But you are correct. That would be a good example to distinguish. I mean, he's not Jewish, he's not benching Gomer, but theoretically, that would be a good example. In other words, it was coming right at him,
yes,
happened to turn his head the last minute, and because of that, it didn't go through his head. So if he was
right.
Jewish, he would bench Gomer, as opposed to if that's where the bullet was always going. He was just standing there, didn't move at all, and it just went by and grazed the ear. It's a slightly different case.
No, but making all the difference.
Correct. And very often, all kinds of blessings, it's or other mitzvahs. It can be a fine line which distinguishes is the mitzvah applicable or not applicable, is the mitzvah done and not done. We have various criteria, and everything has to match up. Okay, number 9. So we're chapter 60. Those who joined us, number 9. We're going to discuss a different type of bracha. So this bracha, we'll read it. Haroyeh chacham gadol b'Torah b'Yisrael. Israel. Someone sees a great chacham, a great Torah scholar. Mevarach, he makes the following blessing. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, bless you Hashem, our God, King in the universe. Shechalek mechachmasa l'reyeov, that he gave a piece of his wisdom, so to speak. I'm loosely translating. A piece of his wisdom to those that fear him, right? And fear him also is not such a great translation, but those who are for real. That is what happens. Now, I guess it's always a little bit subjective who you decide who is a great scholar and who's not a great scholar. And sometimes it's very difficult because presumably to really know if someone's a great scholar, presumably you'd have to test them. Huh? It's a student once asked me once, who do I feel was greater, Rashi or the Rambam? I said, the only way you could actually answer that question, I mean, it was a young man. He's trying to understand. But I explained to him the only way you can answer that question is if you're greater than both of them, and you could give them a test and evaluate. Well, this one's level 9, the other one's level 10, or something like that. Now, although I do like to feel I have a rather healthy self-esteem, but I certainly don't put myself in the same league. Never mind being greater than Rashi and the Rambam, and not even close. So therefore, I'm totally unqualified to say who was greater. And I think even looking back in history, with what they achieved, it would be very difficult to say who had the greater impact even. Sometimes there are certain scholars of the past that who could say who was greater, but you could say that the one or the other certainly left a greater impact, or direct impact at least. Right? But Rashi and the Rambam would be ones that would be very hard to split. Very hard to split. But what you could say is without both of them, Torah would have been lost. I mean, I'm sure Hashem would have worked it out some other way. Hashem would have made it happen some other way. But without those two people, the way it happened is this is what preserved Torah through very difficult times. But anyway, if you see a great scholar, so it's very difficult maybe to decide who's truly a great scholar. But in theory, if there was someone that was universally understood, right, we say this blessing. Right, because the Jewish people are a piece of Hashem and cleave to Hashem. Therefore, we say shechalak. It's just explaining the term when we say that he gave a piece of his wisdom. Chalak, he dished it, like gave out a portion, a share to a person. And since we're connected to Hashem, we can say it's nothing with the halach. Is explaining how we actually use the term. Some of the commentators in Shulchan Aruch say that if you didn't see this great scholar for more than 30 days, you should also say Shechianu. Right? So that's something else. Okay. Next law, next halacha. A person sees a non-Jewish great scholar of whatever academic discipline. It's let's say the world's greatest mathematician, let's say. Now, we're not talking about just someone who knows math. We're talking about someone who's truly extraordinary. So that also deserves a bracha. So Mavorech, what's the bracha you say? Baruch atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, Elokeinu, our God, King of the universe. Shenosim echachmasa lebasav adam. He gave from his wisdom to flesh and blood. That there can be a human being who has a tremendous depth of knowledge and understanding about a certain topic. And again, I would say this could be very difficult to say exactly which person deserves and doesn't deserve. And I'm actually not going to attempt to even answer that. But in concept, if there was someone. Number 10. Someone sees a king, a non-Jewish king. Now, today, there really aren't many kings. Meaning, even let's say the King of England, and my natural, I was almost about to say the Queen of England, but I don't know if we say Oliver Shalom, but whatever the term is, just total side point. I know, just popped into my head since we mentioned her, the Queen. During the Second World War, she volunteered. She was a mechanic and a truck driver during the war. And apparently she was quite good at these big trucks. So in the 80s, she wasn't young. When the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia came to visit her in her summer palace, where they had very large grounds. And he made a comment that in his country, women can't drive and women shouldn't be allowed to drive and different things. So she says, come with me. Anyway, they got in her Range Rover, and however she drove on those grounds, he was terrified, begging her to stop, and she was having a good time at his expense, going around in circles and jumping over things and etc. So a wild side. But even the King of England, they don't have absolute power. It's really just the title. They just happen to be very wealthy people of a certain lineage. They might have influence, but they don't really have power. Maybe a place like Saudi Arabia or something, they can still execute people. And it could be whoever's the chief sheikh over there or something maybe qualifies as the king. But, if we look, let's say pre-World War I, we had, you had a Kaiser in Germany, you had an Austrian-Hungarian Empire, you had certain, these people actually had they were the Tsar in Russia, these people had power.
Somebody who could say off with his head.
That's right. What they call it, the decapitation diet. Lose 18 kilos instantly. So that's how it goes. So if someone sees this, Mavarach, you should make the following blessing. Baruch atah Hashem, bless you Hashem, Elokeinu our God, Melech HaOlam, King of the universe. Shenasa michvoid labasav adam, that he gave some of his glory to a person of flesh and blood. Now, if you don't actually see the king himself, right? There was a procession, and this fancy, all the honor, the pomp, and there's a big crowd. You didn't actually manage to see, see the carriage, you see the someone there. Yeah, you didn't see the king himself. But you just saw the honor. You saw the whole procession and the honor and various things. And clearly, no, it's not you think, oh, who must be getting honored, but all this honor is due to the king. You can still make the bracha, even though you didn't actually physically, you didn't actually see the king. The summa and a blind person, who it's impossible for them to see the king. It's not just they didn't see; it's impossible. They're at the procession. Everyone else is making the blessing. They know the king is there, and they can't see. Yavarach b'loy shem malchus. They should say the bracha without mentioning Hashem's name and without mentioning Hashem's kingship. So they would just say, Baruch Atah, blessed are you, who gave of his glory to flesh and blood. And so not only is this what you say if you happen to see a king, but more so, it's a mitzvah to actually put an effort to see the honor of kings, to do it. Right? And I know some people here learn the Gemara and Brachas. Right? The Gemara and Brachas explains over there, this is to be able to contrast. You'll see the honor that these non-Jewish kings came, and you'll see the honor that Mashiach is going to receive, Mitzvah Shem, and you'll be able to understand it properly. And if you saw this king once before, you shouldn't interrupt your Torah study to go say it again, to see him again. Unless he comes again, the only time you would interrupt. So if you've never done it, you should run and try and say a brach on the king. If you said a brach on this king before and you're learning Torah, so you don't need to run, unless he comes with even greater honor, more soldiers, more pomp. Now there's actually a difference. Okay, now I think I've shared this story once before, probably more than once before, but I think it belongs here. a lot of those, when the Turks were running Israel, a lot of the Ashkenazi Jews anyway, a lot of them tried to get citizenship from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, whether they were actually citizens or not, right? Because it gave them certain protection. The Kaiser was relatively speaking for the time good to the Jews, and he ensured a degree of protection. Well, ensured maybe it's too strong a word, but he exerted influence which gave better protection to his citizens than other people had. I won't say it was a full protection, but it was better. And he came and he visited Israel. So first of all, it's a king, world famous king. People want to come say a bracha. And second of all, a lot of the Jews felt a certain sense of appreciation, the fact that he gave them a degree of protection. So at that time, the chief rabbi, or unofficial chief rabbi Yerushalayim, was Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. He actually was a citizen of. He actually was from that part of the world, and he did not go out to see the king. And so people asked him, Shigan, he said, like fobbed them off. He said, well, at least don't you want to go and say the bracha? How many times in your life do you get the opportunity to say this bracha? So he says that he has a Messiah from his teachers. He had a Messiah from their teachers, that the Germanic people are descendants of Amalek. And he does not want to say a bracha on a king of Amalek. That's what he said. And seemingly history has proven him correct. It's an interesting thing. So even though it's a mitzvah to and Shlomo Ganzri, the author of this work, came from the same yeshivas, essentially. So Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. So even though the ruling is that in the ideal world you should be actually chasing after the opportunity to say a bracha on a king, but still, he didn't feel that he should. Okay. Unless there are any questions, we move on to number 11. So Haroy Kivra Yisrael. Someone sees Jewish graves.
Rabbi,
We're going to loosely say yes.
I'm sorry. What year was that when the Kaiser came to Eretz Israel?
I couldn't tell the exact year, but I'm going to say approximately around 1900. Well, there's a drop before, a drop after. I mean, First World War, that was the end of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire and its kings.
I figured this was the First World War.
Yeah, and that's when Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld was the most prominent, was in the first part of the last century.
Thank you.
Yeah. So someone sees Jewish graves. Now, so if you go to the cemetery, in other words, but it doesn't have to be, you don't have to actually go into the cemetery. You could see them, right? Sometimes even from a distance. It depends, today there's, usually in a city, you don't see anything from the distance because there's whole buildings in the way and various things. But in theory, especially in a rural area, you could maybe even see them a long way away. You can see the tombstones. So it's not that you have to be there. It's if you see them, right? If again, I'm just making up an example just to differentiate. There could be a person who he's a quarter mile away from the cemetery, but it's all open land and he sees it. It could be someone else who's 10 yards from the cemetery, but there's a giant brick wall and he doesn't see anything. So the one who sees it says the blessing, and the one who doesn't see it, even though he knows they're right there, he's in the vicinity, he does not say the blessing. Right? It's all about seeing. So the person sees Jewish graves. Right? He sees the graves. Mavarach, he should make the following blessing. This is a bit of a longer one. says, Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you, Hashem, Elokeinu, our God, Melech Haolam, King of the universe, Asher yotza eschem bedin, that He created you with din, with judgment, with justice. And he just says here, etc. But it goes on, V'zan v'chilkel eschem, and He sustained you and nourished you, right? Chilkel eschem bedin, and He did it with justice, that when He sustained you. V'meimis eschem bedin, and He caused you to pass away, with judgment, with din. V'yedei mispa kulchem bedin, and He knows everything about you, everything you did, everything relevant to you with din. And v'hu asid nachayoschem, and in the future He's going to bring you back to life, l'kayim, and keep you in existence, eschem, you, bedin, with judgment. Baruch atah Hashem, blessed are you Hashem, machaya mesim, who resurrects the dead. So this is the bracha that we say, and as we're going to say again, this is if you didn't go to a cemetery within 30 days. Right? All these things, unless it's said otherwise, it's always 30 days. Within 30 days, you don't say the blessings. We took more than 30 days. Now, the Al Kivrei Akum Oimer, person sees non-Jewish graves. You should say, Boishe Imchem Ma'oid. Said, your mother's very embarrassed. Chafi Ladchem, or you say, the one who gave birth to you is embarrassed. And the Achres Goyim Midbatzio Rabba. The final outcome, the result for the nations, is a wilderness and a wasteland, and like a desert. Okay, so this is actually taken from Yirmiyahu, the prophet, and he said this as part of his prophecy of the destruction of Babylon. So in other words, when he sees the non-Jewish graves, we look at this as the end of the various nations that have oppressed us. So if it was someone's grave that we know that was one of the righteous Gentiles of the world, and was nice to us and didn't oppress us, we wouldn't say this. But that's how it looked. Now, number 12. Kol habrachas hariyav niskoros. All these blessings. I mean, I've said this already, but here's what's actually written. All these blessings that we mentioned that are about seeing something. Im chazavra oisam advarim ba'atzman. If you see the exact same thing again, ein chayzim avorech, you don't make a new brach on it. El im came unless ben ria la ria shloshim yom, unless 30 days are between the two times you see it. So only if there's been a 30-day gap. But I know this means chutz miyom haria harishona, but chutz miyom ria zois. In other words, 30 days exclusive. So you saw on day 1, 30 days in between, so up to 31 days, and you see again on day 32. So those 30 days in between, exclusive. Aval imroi dava acha kazeh shural. Well, if you see another thing of the same type, so let's just use a shooting star as an example. You saw a different shooting star, or they went to a different Jewish cemetery. Kagoin, for example, Melech Achar, you saw another king, Gevarim Achirim, or other graves, Kadoim and the like. Then you could make the bracha even within 30 days. So if you see the same ones, you have to have a 30-day gap. All right, so
Bye.
My four
Rabbi,
grandparents. Yeah, yes.
I'm sorry. If we pass graves belonging to non-Jews who were good to the Jews or who were pro-Jewish and helped us,
Yeah.
what do we say?
You don't say anything. I mean, it's the other ones we make. We say, you're the one who gave birth to you is embarrassed by you.
That's the ones that are bad to us.
Yeah,
With
and the other
most
ones we don't make a comment. Really, because even the Jewish graves, the main part of it is the Tchias Mason, the resurrection of the dead. Even though,
Yeah.
by the way, even non-Jews who keep the 7 mitzvahs properly will also have a resurrection. That's
Yes.
side point. But so for an example, I haven't visited in a long time, but in Sydney, my 4 grandparents are buried in Sydney, but that's actually not correct. One's buried in Perth, but so 3 in Sydney. Well, the ones in Sydney, one is in one cemetery, and the other 2 in a different cemetery. Like well over maybe 2 hours from each other. So I have in the past had a visit and just sort of gone to the cemeteries. So even though I might have gone to both in the same day, or one day after the other, but since it's a different cemetery, different Jewish graves around, you would say the blessing again, as an example. Okay, 13. Now, Haroi Kushi, if a person sees a black person. Now, I just want to point out, the blessing we're going to discuss is if someone sees something you don't normally see. So in Europe, if a Jew lived in Poland, they maybe never saw a colored person their entire life. If someone saw a black person, it was highly unusual. Today in America, it's a common, most cities, you can see every day. It's not an unusual thing. And even if you happen to go to some country town where they're not, you wouldn't say a blessing today because it's a normal thing. I don't know, maybe somewhere in Scandinavia or something, it's still a novelty. I'm not sure today. I think today, the global world, I think everyone sees everything. But in Eastern Europe in those days, it was such a rare, unusual thing. Totally. So right, Kushi, someone sees a person who is colored skin, the gichor, or a gichor. So what's a gichor? The Hainish Odom Harbe is a very red skin. Lavkin, you see, it's a lavkin. Again, you use definition. Hainu, this is Shalovan Harbe. A person, will say albino, and an incredibly white skin. Now, again, today, I think, we live in large cities, and it's not really that unusual to see an albino person either. But again, if you lived in a shtetl in Eastern Europe, either you saw the guy every day, or you never saw one. The chaos, I know that is Shu'arach V'dak. He's someone who's extremely tall and thin. Has we call the giant syndrome. What they call people are very tall. It's so unusual. But nanas, or a dwarf. And again, it's not unusual to see a dwarf nowadays in most cities. It depends where you live, but all these things. But a drakoina, what's that? The Heinel, this is someone. Mishu Male Yabelis. He's covered in warts or something. Has growths all over him. Sio Roish, someone whose hair is matted. Like an afro or something. I mean, it was like unheard of. Whoever saw such a thing in Eastern Europe. All these hair is attached. Looks like, no one ever
Dreadlocks.
saw anything. Rashi on the
Dreadlocks.
Gemara, to find that says that the person's hair looks like felt. It's totally attached. There's a pill if you see an elephant. There's a kite or a monkey. And again, I think every one of us, has gone to a zoo several times. No one's going to be all shocked when they see an elephant. But in Eastern Europe, someone saw an elephant. No one's even shocked to see a monkey. And also part of it for us is not only we see in real life, we see in media. We see photos, we see videos, we see different things. So for us, these things are not exciting. But once upon a time, if you lived in a certain region, I don't know, maybe for Americans, if they see a kangaroo, maybe that's, but again, also you're seeing pictures of different things, but that kind of thing.
All the kinds of things where you would run out to tell Mabel to come out and take a look.
Exactly.
That
That's right. You see things unusual, you're like, your jaw drops, you do a double take, and you tell everyone, check this out. Right? So I'm not sure that any of these things nowadays would have that effect. But once upon a time. So if someone sees Mavarach and makes a blessing, Baruch Ato Hashem, bless you Hashem, Elokeinu our God, Melech Haolam King of the Universe, Meshan Habrios, who creates different creations. So we're praising Hashem for his variety of creation. And you only say this once for each thing, each species. When the unusual look left a big impression on you. So if a person saw someone once, you can, again, if we're talking about big cities, the first time a child maybe sees a dwarf as an example, they're like shocked, they can't understand. And after that, they understand there's such people, there's people who are short, and they see it all the time, it doesn't have an effect. Now, the child doesn't really make a bracha because children aren't so much obligated, and pretty much by the time we're an adult, we've all seen it, been there, done that, so it's nothing exciting anymore. But in concept, it's like the story, they say, why doesn't the American make a bracha on his first cigarette, shechina on his first cigarette? Because he snuck it in the bathroom at school, so can't make a bracha there. Why didn't the Israeli say a bracha on his first cigarette? Because he was too young to speak. There we go. I mean, it's not so much the culture today in Israel that everyone smokes, but there used to be not so long ago. But anyway, so today, often when we see a lot of these things and get shocked, maybe a kid goes to the zoo the first time and sees the size of an actual elephant. The yeshiva started here, Baruch Hashem. We took the boys to see a shchita. It was a shchita on a farm, nearby farm. And I normally wouldn't have gone on such a trip right at the beginning of the year. Let's get learning first, but it's not a regular thing. It might be the only time this year. So if it's happening and actually inspecting the animals and everything, so we took the boys. Interestingly, not so much the boys, but the older Bachrim, who like the mentors, were surprised to see how big a cow really is up close. The city slickers, the New Yorkers, and different things. Actually, one was actually from Miami, one's from Crown Heights, and one's from Miami. They were shocked. Wow, they're so big. It's interesting. So it had an effect. So I don't know. I don't think they have to say a blessing on the cow, but it's a usual thing. But it had an impact. Had an impact. Okay. Number 14. Slightly different thing. So till now, and interestingly, even these things, the color person, the dwarf, the albino, none of this is negative. This is a blessing to praise Hashem for a variety of creation. In other words, it's inherently a positive thing that people are different. Just since it was something that was surprised, now we're going to speak about things that are different. Someone sees someone lame, right? They can't walk. There's a kiteya, or he's missing limbs. The hainel, so he's giving a definition. Shnichtal yodov, he was missing hands, let's say. And this is either from birth or amputation. Just this doesn't matter. It's a summa or a blind person, a mukashchin, or a person covered in boils. But kanin, or a kanin. So kanin is humishemis numab in the kudus lavonos. He's covered in white dots. I guess it's some type of skin condition. Now, it's like this. Im heim me imam. If these people were born that way, then mavarach b'pam rishon shoroi oisam. Then the first time you see them, you make this following blessing of Mashana Habrios. Again, Hashem who makes different creations. If they got these conditions after birth, him. And now, so we don't say a broch, they're not a different creation, but maybe you feel for them. You know, this guy Nebuch, he lost his legs, and you feel a pain, you feel for him. Then Mavarach, you make the blessing, Dayan Ha'emes, the true judge. Right? We learned about this blessing before. So when you hear bad news or that someone passed away, so we say this blessing also to commiserate together with someone. You know, I don't think that means you have to stop people who you see in the shopping mall and ask, "Excuse me, were you born without legs, or did this happen?" You know, it's often best not to. I mean, saying the obvious, but you know, just people don't like the attention often. But in theory, if you know. 15. Back to the more positive things. Someone sees beautiful trees or beautiful creations. By creation, I mean people. Even someone, you know, we're talking about, you say you see a non-Jewish person and they're incredibly beautiful. So I say Bria Ba'alma. You just happen to glance at them, because why would you glance at them? Ki os the boy, because it's forbidden to stare at people. Right? It's we're not meant to be staring at people. Or a behemo, you saw a beautiful animal. Mavarich, you make the blessing. In other words, anything in creation that you see that's beautiful. So not because they had plastic surgery or, you know, various things, but you see something that's a beautiful, natural, beautiful thing. You say, Baruch Atah Hashem, bless you, Hashem, Elokeinu, our God, Melech Haolam, King of the universe, Shekacha Lo B'Olamoi, who has such things in his world. And you only say this bracha the first time you see this creation, not more. Not on them and not on other ones. So if you saw the most majestic stallion and you made this bracha on it, doesn't matter how many stallions you see in your lifetime, you don't make another bracha. Unless they are significantly nicer. So a person sees this beautiful whatever and makes a bracha, and then they see something, you know, just leaves the first one makes it look ordinary. Then you'll say the blessing again, because it's a whole new category, whole new level. You know, it's like what the kids say when something, oh, it's a new level. Huh? That's what we say. Okay. So we had we a few times this week. Last week, people mentioned Goimel. Now we're going to mention Goimel. Chapter 61. Chapter 61. Siman Samach Aleph. Birchas Goimel. This is the blessing of Goimel. And also some other blessings for certain circumstances, for specific circumstances. Okay. Now, just to mention as an introduction to the Goimel. Those who daven daily will know that after Baruch Shama, we say a section called Mizmor L'Seidah. Right, it's a special Psalm of Tehillim that was that King David wrote, that was sung when a carbon toida was brought. And we're going to discuss soon, because we mentioned Goimel, and the toida was brought. So it was a special, well, it's usually translated as a thanksgiving offering. So thank Hashem for various things. We're going to explain in the chapter. The person recovered from an illness that their life was at risk. They were in a prison. They crossed a desert. They crossed the ocean. Various things. So life-threatening situations, and they survived. So a person would bring a carbon taida, and it was an animal, and it was various loaves of bread, and they would make a meal, and people come and help them eat. All this food has to be eaten within a certain time limit, and that's the Suda Saidah, when you recount the miracle and various things. Today, without a Beis Mikdash, we cannot bring the offering, unfortunately. Mitzvah Hashem today will be rebuilt, and we can bring the offering, but till now, someone who had to bring a taida could not. So Chazal, our sages, instituted the blessing of Goimel, that a person should at least say a blessing to thank Hashem in those situations where if there was a Beis Hamikdash, they could bring the offering. So that's what the bracha Goimel is. It's our plan B, so to speak. It's the replacement. Well, it's not a replacement, still something tell you, but it's the best we can do in a situation where a person has to bring a taida. So number one, arba tzrichas lahodos. There are four. When it says four, meaning four people, it would mean four categories of people, four general categories. Who are they? The first one is Yodei Hayam She'igil Limchleis Chevsa. People who travel by sea, they reach their destination. They've arrived. They arrived safely. They crossed an ocean safely. The next one, similarly, people who travel through a wilderness, a desert. Or some other travel where there's a danger. A person, people running away from certain countries, and they used to go to Israel. They go through other dangerous countries and maybe shot at a border, or whatever it happens to be, God forbid. So it doesn't have to be a desert per se, but any type of dangerous travel. When a person reaches their destination again. But klal zeh gam shayvus konas acheres, and included in this was someone who was in some other type of dangerous situation. And he was saved. Kugoin, for example, shnaf olav koisel, a wall collapsed on him. He's buried. But he got rescued. Or in the Gacha Shor, an ox gored him. Or he's going to give another example. Shubolav listim b'derech. Bandits attacked him on the highway. Robberman came on the road. Shaydei Laila, or night bandits, night marauders. They came in. But that's for him, and he was saved. His life was saved. Kedom and the like. Okay, next category. Mishai Chayla Sheish V'Sekon, a person who was so ill that his life was in risk. Kegoin, for example, Maka Shechalo, an internal injury. Heart attack, God forbid. Oisha Mutal B'Mita Shlosh Yomim, who was bedridden for 3 days, because he's sick. And then he recovered, and he walks around healthy. And the fourth category is Mishai Cholish basis, Asurim, someone who was in prison. Philarakal Iske Mammon, even on due to monetary matters. which was generally less dangerous than someone who was, capital offense. V'yatsa, and he was released. Okay, there was simonach and a little way to remember these four. V'chol ha'chaim yeducha sela. Well, it's a phrase in davening, but the word chaim over here stands for chayla, a sick person. Yisurim has problems, being tormented, so that's like prison. And then yam and the midbar, in the wilderness, ocean. Okay, so these four people would have to have brought a korban toida, and since there's no korban toida nowadays, we bench goimel. Okay, so we said who has to say it. Now he says, Mama Baruch. What does he say? Baruch atah Hashem, bless you, Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, my God, King of the universe, hagoimel l'chayovim toivos, that he bestows good things on the guilty. Right? In other words, it's not that we deserve a miracle. Shemulani kol toiv, and he's given goodness on me. So that's the blessing, he says. V'shaimim, and those who hear this blessing, Omen, they say, me shigamalcha toiv, the one who's given good to you, the gamalcha kol toiv sela. You should give goodness forever. All right, I think we've run out of time. So I guess we'll see everyone next week, God willing.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Take care.
Everybody have a great week.
Bye.